Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to our makeshift studio. I'm Rabbi Yisrael Bernath. I'm here with Alex Traiman. Alex Traiman is the CEO of the JNS, the Jewish News Syndicate. We're here actually sitting in Jerusalem in this makeshift car studio, and they have been literally on the front lines of all of the reporting throughout the past 2 weeks. So I figured, Alex, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on the ground here?
Well, I mean, are you asking about the military situation, the social situation, or the media situation?
Well, let's start with the military, because that seems to be the most important. I guess I would say unfortunate, but it's a reality.
Oh, absolutely. It's very real right now. You know, after what happened on Simchat Torah, just 2 weeks ago, over 1,400 killed, over 200 taken hostage into the Gaza Strip. Still more than 200 people suffering serious injuries in Israeli hospitals. Israel has been absolutely pummeling the Gaza Strip from the air nonstop for the last couple of weeks, and in addition, they've called up hundreds of thousands of reserves, which are both sealing off the Gaza border and staging to go into Gaza for an impending ground incursion, which the defense minister said just today could last a period of 1, 2, 3 months or more.
Wow.
And at the same time, at least half, reportedly, of the soldiers are staged in the north. And there's been fighting back and forth along the border with Lebanon between Hezbollah and Israel. People have been killed on both sides of the border. Hezbollah has been using anti-tank guided missiles to attack Israeli positions and firing mortars and sending drones in. Israel's been using drones and attacking from the air and using new third generation artillery also to hit inside Lebanon, and so that border is heating up, and it could very well be that Israel finds itself fighting a multi-front battle in the very near future.
And what's the morale like here in Jerusalem?
Well, surprisingly, you know, the morale's mixed, right? There's still a lot of people here that are uncertain how what happened on Simchat Torah could have happened, the intelligence failing, the security breach. Why did it take so many hours for security to arrive? And you know, how strong is Israeli leadership? How strong is the military? How prepared is the military? But what I think is more important is the reports that we're getting from the soldiers, and that the morale among soldiers is very, very high. The feeling that this is what they've been training for, you know, their whole lives, what they've been waiting for. You know, this is a war, I think, that everybody in Israel knew was coming at some point. They weren't prepared to start it themselves, but nobody's surprised that this is the situation that we're in. And I think that there's a great desire among the soldiers and also the people of Israel to win the war and to change a lot of the paradigms that had broken down over so many years that led us into this mess that we have now with Hamas and Hezbollah.
We were just walking around Ben Yehuda. We just literally took a 10-minute walk through Jerusalem. The streets are empty. Why do you think the streets are empty? I mean, I guess coming here, I expected that, but...
Well, I think part of it is because, you know, who's running these establishments, who's keeping them open during the days and the nights, and these are young adults, and a lot of them have been called up to service, or people don't realize we're talking as many as 500,000 soldiers, depending on who you ask, anywhere between 360 to 500,000.
So no one knows the exact number.
Called up, right? You know, from reserves into active duty right now. So you know, that doesn't leave a lot of young people to be manning restaurants and other things, and also a lot of businesses rely also on Arab labor, and there's a tremendous tension right now. So in restaurants and other places that depend on Arab labor, a lot of them are telling their Arab labor not to come in right now. So that's causing all these stores, as you saw, would normally be open, they're closed.
Because they're afraid that something will happen?
It could be. The tensions are super high right now. I mean, when we were sitting in the restaurant, you heard that they apprehended a terrorist on Agrippa Street right near the Shuk Machne Yehuda.
It's crazy. I was literally sitting right where they apprehended the terrorist, like maybe 20 minutes before it happened.
Exactly, and one of the major fears, the IDF has also been very active, even as most recent as last night in Samaria, especially just to the north of Jerusalem. The Israeli Air Force jet bombed a mosque last night that was believed to be housing a terror entity that was preparing for imminent attack. And so there's...
So it was in a mosque.
Yes, because Hamas uses mosques, schools, hospitals, and civilian areas as staging grounds and storage for missiles and other weapons, and they hide there. And they actually are hoping that Israel will strike them in order to be able to then play part of the psychological warfare, narrative warfare that they're playing, which is that Israel strikes hospitals, Israel strikes mosques, Israel strikes schools, Israel strikes military targets, and this is a war. And right now, you could be sure that if Hamas is using any of these types of buildings, whether it's civilian infrastructure or a school or a mosque or a hospital, as housing for their leadership or storage for their weapons, that it's going to be bombed by the IDF.
There are very, very few media sources that I trust right now. I mean, in Canada, for example, the moment that hospital was hit, it wasn't even minutes. It took days for our prime minister to put out a statement. It took minutes for him to put out a statement that it was Israel's fault.
Right.
Your media outlet is really one of the few outlets, I would say right now, that is highly trustworthy. How are you able to get, how is this happening that you're able to get the correct information so quickly and doing it the way that you're doing it?
Well, first of all, it's a lot quicker to get wrong information out than it is to get right information. If you saw what happened on that night, and I'll tell you, within minutes of that strike, that errant missile, but by the way, the reports were that the IDF struck a hospital in Gaza and killed 500 people, right? So it took us days to figure out how many people were killed on October 7th on Simchat Torah. But within seconds, the reports were that Israel struck a hospital and killed 500 people. So as it turned out, not only did the IDF not strike it, but it was an errant Hamas rocket that struck it.
And apparently it wasn't 500 people.
It didn't even hit the hospital, okay? The rocket hit the parking lot outside the hospital. You could see in any of the drone footage that the entire hospital building is still standing. There's some marks on the facade of the building next to the parking lot that demonstrates that there was an accident in the parking lot, and that reports are that there probably is not more than 20 people dead, even if that, because this was 1:30 in the morning in the parking lot of a hospital. So how many people could have been there at that time? But of course, within seconds, the entire international media was on the story. Now, we were in touch from the moment that we heard that it could have been an errant Hamas rocket. I was personally in touch with the IDF spokesperson's unit and also with the Prime Minister's office, and I was telling them, we need statements from you guys right away confirming that this wasn't a missile, there wasn't an IDF strike. And they said, we have to check everything. They had to check. You can imagine how many different units they have from sea, air, ground that could be shooting in all kinds of different targets at the same time. They needed to confirm everything. And so to get the truth out actually takes longer than to get out lies, because lies can spread in seconds. So I always tell my reporters, the greatest asset that we have as a news agency is our reputation. And in order to build a reputation, you have to get it right over and over and over and over again. And that could be hundreds, if not thousands, of good decisions taken every single day and every single week. But to ruin your reputation, all it takes is one mistake, right? So we can't always be the fastest because we have to verify. But if you're getting it from JNS, that it's likely to be the highest quality level of reporting you could find.
I've definitely found that, and that's one of the reasons why I'm really happy to be talking to you. We were sitting in the restaurant just now, and we saw. It's amazing for me to see how positive, how I can't even describe it any more than loving and happy and joyous. I mean, there was a birthday party going on right next to us. What's the secret? I mean, I expected to come. At least this is what I have seen so far. I've only been here a few hours. But I expected to come to a depressed country. And I thought I was coming to be mechazek, to lift up. And I'm sure there will be people. I'm going to visit hospitals. I'm going to visit families that they're waiting to hear about news, families that have shivas. So I'm going to have that. But what I see so far from the average person on the street is a certain sense of happiness that I can't. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, I mean, first of all, Jerusalem has been one of the quieter cities in terms of all the violence. There's been some rocket sirens, but no direct hits in the city. And, so life in Jerusalem hasn't been affected as much as those that are in the south, of course, and even in the north. We have 200,000 displaced Israelis right now who've been forced to evacuate their homes. Like everybody hears about how many Gazans have been forced to evacuate. In Israel, 200,000 people are been evacuated from their homes, and there in the last 2 weeks we've had 1,400 funerals. So
1,400
it's it's
funerals.
it's a very, very sad time. But the thing about Israel and is this the special Israeliness, as people like to call it, is that people here like life. They love life. They celebrate life. This is a place that's so alive all the time with such great spirit, and people like to move and to be active. And it's just such a stark contrast between Hamas and the Palestinian cultures, which literally glorify death. In Israel, we don't glorify death at all. We celebrate life at every moment, and this such tremendous resilience of the Israeli people to just keep going with life. And that's why I think that Israel is going to win this war, because they're fighting for life.
You just before uh, s- just said some numbers that I haven't heard in the media, at least in Canada. Um, are there any other things that I think that are not getting out to the West from here that you think are important for people to know? Of just numbers, things that have happened.
Oh, so many things. I mean, from the barbaric nature of the attacks, which I'm not even going to go into. People have
Please,
started to
yes,
see all that. How much efforts were taken by organizations like Zaka to collect all the parts of the bodies. They said that they used more equipment in 4 days than they use in 3 years.
wow.
In order to do that, the fact that civilians were involved in the attack, that there were Gazans dressed in civilian clothes that just raced across the border with the terrorists that participated in it. Um, there's so many things. I mean, also the impending normalization agreements that Israel was working on with the Saudis, right, which would have, in a sense, effectively ended the greater Israeli-Arab conflict, because you would have had the center of the two holy spots and holy sites in Islam saying, no, we're coming to terms with the Jewish state of Israel, and Hamas obviously trying to foil that.
Do you think that has something to do with it?
Oh, absolutely, and it's something to do with it. They're seeing how the Emirates, Bahrain, now Saudi Arabia, Morocco, ready to normalize relations with Israel, and they don't want relations normalized with Israel. They don't want Israel. So these are some of the elements, but there's a lot of stories that aren't being reported, and that's
Is there a story, a narrative that's happened that hasn't gotten enough attention that you think that people need to know about?
look, the strength of the Iron Dome, to thousands of missiles. We're talking like 7,000 rockets have been fired at Israel. The fact that Israel can shoot them out of the sky with precision is just, it's amazing. The fact that even all of the rockets that have gotten through, and hit, so it's such miracles. Each one of those rockets could kill dozens of people if it would land in the right place at the right time. But we're seeing a lot of divine intervention, even despite the horrific attack on last Saturday morning on Simchat Torah. There's just been, feels like there's a lot of divine protection here, and I think the other part of it is just, it's amazing to see around the world, this dichotomy of those that are standing up to support the state of Israel and to celebrate democracy and freedom, and those in the West also that are just siding with Hamas in this. I mean, it's unbelievable how this global jihad has infected Western institutions, particularly the universities, but also parliaments. I mean, the U.S. Congress and the British Parliament, and I assume also in Canada, you're
Absolutely.
experiencing the same thing. The people would side with the jihad against Israel. I mean, it's
People don't understand it, and I think that and this is something that, it almost It bothers me because it's being called a war. A war usually needs two sides. This is I mean, this is my personal opinion. I haven't heard this from anyone, but it doesn't make sense to me. This is a war. This is something that nobody wanted. This. I've spoken to reservists, two American reservists that I've been with for a few hours who came here from the U.S. because they were called from the U.S. Israel paid their ticket to come back because they needed them, and war seems to be like two sides. There's no two sides here.
Well, there is two sides in this war. There's the side of good and there's the side of evil. And the side of evil, Hamas, they started this war on their terms. But this war is not going to end on their terms. This war is going to end on Israel's terms. When Israel decides that it's over, and when Hamas has either come out waving a white flag, or all their senior leadership is dead, and all of their military capacity and motivation to commit an attack is completely eradicated. Well, this is a war, and Israel's going to fight, is fighting hard, and is going to fight to win.
Yes, and what I'm trying to say is that when you're dealing with barbaric attacks, which means war, there's rules of war in war. Sure. There's certain things you do and don't do. This is everything that I've heard and everything that I've seen over the past 2 weeks. There's no rules of war here. I'm not saying on the Israel side, on the Hamas side.
Yeah, Israel follows rules that it shouldn't even be asked to follow. Set up humanitarian aid for Hamas. Are you kidding me? How about there can be humanitarian aid when all the hostages are returned? But these are some of the double standards that are being forced on Israel to adhere to laws and to rules that no other party would adhere to. But this is an asymmetric war. This is a state with a military that is fighting a terror entity that mixes in, hides behind civilians, right? That you don't know the difference between a militant and a civilian, and that has no problems to kidnap children and elderly and sick, and this is who we're dealing with, and that's exactly why Israel has no choice but to win, because as long as Hamas and other terror organizations think that they can get away with playing an asymmetric game, the Jewish people around the world are going to be at risk.
Around the world, yeah.
This is a global jihad. It's not just Hamas. It's not just Hezbollah to Israel's north. There's a whole ring of fire around Israel. Most of Iranian-funded proxies like the Houthi in Yemen, and there's proxies in Iraq and in Syria as well. And we heard that the Iraqis are going to be coming through Jordan potentially. You have the Iranian Revolutionary Guards there as well. But like I said, this global jihad has infected Western thinking as well. And you have the universities and the media and world parliaments and the United Nations all working to bolster Hamas and the Palestinian people, and to delegitimize, demonize Israel, and hold Israel to gross double standards. So it's in a way it really is erupting as a world war.
Wow. Let's talk about the hostages a second. What do you know about them?
Well, we don't know too much about them. I mean, the number of the hostages continues to go up. I mean, right now I believe that they're saying it's 212 hostages that are known, but there are still hundreds of people missing because Israel hasn't been able to identify all those who are dead, and they're trying to find out. And they've done some light incursions into Gaza and the border areas, and they're finding Jews dead inside the Gaza border fence on the Gaza side. So you don't know who's alive and who's dead, but they know that at least 212 are being held hostage. We saw a film of one of the hostages saying, that she's injured, but Hamas is taking such good care of her and treating her well, and she hopes to come home soon. This is all part of the psychological warfare game. I imagine that Israel does have some good intelligence on where many of the hostages are, but they're not going to let that be known, because if that becomes known, then hostages could be moved, and then the intelligence becomes moot. So it's been very hush on what's been happening with the hostages. But of course, this is the part that tears at the hearts and souls of Israelis more than anything else.
Absolutely.
To know that their loved ones are kidnapped and being tortured in the Gaza Strip by barbarians.
Right. I mean, there was two women from the U.S. that were released before Shabbat, and one of them we've seen a picture of her. The other one we haven't, and I'm assuming that there's reason for that. I don't know.
I think we've seen pictures of both of them.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
I've seen both. Yes. So, but those are Americans. They live in America, and that's
Right.
why you see that Hamas. You know, why did they release two? Because they're hoping that by releasing two, that they give America the impression that they'll be willing to release more, and they can do a slow drip and try to prevent, have the United States prevent Israel from going in. With the ground incursion, and even though I will tell you for certain that getting back as many hostages as possible is one of the primary military objectives of the IDF in this conflict, but what is an even greater objective is making sure that Hamas never has the capacity to take a single hostage again.
Absolutely.
That's much more important.
Let's talk about the ground invasion. We have in the West been hearing every single day. There are people who are watching their news literally on loop, waiting for this ground invasion. It hasn't happened. It's been every day. It's today. It's today. It's today. What do we know about it right now?
Israel's certainly trying to keep everybody guessing, especially the Hamas operatives in Gaza. They want them holed up as long as possible, you know, with their run out of food, to run out of supplies. You know, in the beginning, it was very hard. Israel found it very difficult to mobilize hundreds of thousands of troops in a moment's notice and to get them all weapons, protective gear, and so it took a few days to work that all out. You know, Israel's put pretty sophisticated battle plans into place, which took time to disseminate. Commanders were flown over the Gaza Strip in choppers to see the territory in advance of going in, so they could see it for themselves. And also, you could imagine that a lot of these reservists that might be working in high tech or might have put on 10 pounds or whatever it is, you know, they hadn't done intensive combat training in a long time. And so actually what's been taking place in the last week or so has been intensive combat training, you know, together with the battle preparations. And it's widely understood that the Gaza Strip is going to be a highly booby-trapped and difficult urban fighting environment. And so you don't want to send Israeli soldiers in until you're very sure of exactly what you're doing, what the objectives are, how do you do it, who are you targeting, because I think the one thing that could sap morale more than anything in this country would be to be sending thousands of troops in and to not have thousands of troops come home.
Right.
So, you know, that's the difference between the Israeli soldier and the Hamas terrorist, is that the Hamas terrorist, if he dies trying to murder Jews, that's the greatest glory. And that person will be glorified in the society. And in Israel, we value the life of every soldier. We don't want to lose even a single one. And that's really the difference between the two societies.
You've given me so much time. I have one last question. There is a feeling amongst a lot of people in my community, I've heard this from a lot of people in Canada and the US, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. There's this really huge feeling. What do you think we can do right now to support?
Yeah, you know, people keep asking me that question. Yeah, I just tell you from myself, you know, we run a media platform, jns.org, and we've been you know, publishing nonstop, but I said I have to do more. So we immediately started reaching out to other media outlets, and I've done personally more than 50 interviews with mainstream media, and my colleagues also together. We've done probably 120 different media outlets, and I really think that everybody needs to look for themselves at what they can do. Like, figure out what you can do. For some people, that's supporting a good cause. You know, for other people, it's organizing equipment. For other people, it's organizing missions. But I'll tell you even more than that. I think that you know, in the last period, the Jewish people have suffered from you know, lapsed judgment with regard to Jewish unity. I think that there's been a tremendous amount of disunity between religious and secular, between right wing and left wing. Everybody looking for different distinctions as why the other Jew is not the same like me. And, you know, these are the reasons why we disagree, instead of looking for all of the commonalities and the reasons why it's okay that the Jewish people are are a nation of tribes, 12 tribes with different ideologies, different genetic backgrounds that all sit together as one, and that's when God is the most happy with us. So I think that it's very important for people to try to do some repair, as we call tikkun, a fix for that disunity, to come together as a people, to support one another, to mend some of the rifts. And the other thing I think is really to step up for Israel and what we call the Hasbara perspective, to be getting the truth out there, to be combating the misinformation, to be calling out the lies and the biases, and also to be putting out a lot of positive energy right now that Israel's going to win. Because I really do believe that Israel's going to win, but you have to put that energy out into the world. This is as much a spiritual battle as a physical one, and so anything that people can do to just give over in some way, some positive energy, I think it really helps.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you very much for your time. And for those of you who didn't hear that, it's jns.org. I'm going to post all of the links. And right now, from what Alex is telling me, they have been working absolutely overtime. This has really pushed them a little further than they've ever imagined, thank God. And they need a little parachute. So I'm looking at you to be able to help them out. They are a nonprofit organization.
More than I wouldn't call it a parachute. I'd call it some rocket fuel. We need to go further and faster than we've been going. But if not, we'll be here. We're going to keep going.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.